Just a few days after October 7th, I saw for the first time a post on my social media feed with his photo and a hashtag, Bring Hersh Home. But it took me almost a week to make the connection. It was the middle of the night, and we weren't sleeping well, worried sick about loved ones and friends. I was half asleep when my wife cried out, "That's our Rachel. That's our Rachel." She showed me an article in the New York Times. It was October 12th, 2023. The byline was Rachel Goldberg, and she was writing about her son, Hersh. We realized at that moment what we should have figured out much more quickly. How many Hershes did we know? But this one and his family, we did. My wife ran to our living room and grabbed the photo album from our daughter's bat mitzvah. She flipped through it frantically and then pointed to the photo of a 12-year-old boy in a red sweatshirt with glasses on and said, "That's Hersh." 13 years ago, soon after we had moved to Jerusalem, my wife came home one afternoon and told me she'd made a new friend that day. Her name was Rachel, and she and her husband, John, as happens when you live in a place like Jerusalem, invited us to Shabbat dinner along with our entire family. The amazing, loving, beautiful family that the world, for the most tragic of reasons, has come to know is exactly as you would expect. Loving, devoted, sweet, compassionate, funny, gracious, strong. Hersh, as we've probably all come to know, was a special, special soul. He was kind and giving. He loved music and music festivals. He loved to travel. He was a great, great friend. He was thoughtful and generous. He was a pure soul. This is what his mother wrote about him in that New York Times piece published 328 days ago. 10 years ago, Rachel wrote then, we were preparing to celebrate the bar mitzvah of our son Hersh. His Torah portion was the same as the one Jews around the world will read in the coming days, the story of Noah and how God destroyed much of the world with a terrible flood. But Hersh's attention was not on destruction. Instead, he focused on how water could save the world. So he swam laps to raise money for an organization that digs wells in Africa to provide clean, life-saving water. This is the kind of person Hersh, our oldest child and only son, is. Gentle and kind and always finding creative ways to improve things and connect with other human beings. Later in her piece, Rachel wrote, I don't know if he's dead or alive or if I'll ever see him again. The only thing I know is that this is not the fate that Hersh or any of the other captives, among whom are several other Americans, deserves. We came to learn that Hersh was alive. The terrorists who stole him from his family forced him to appear in a video that was released back in April. But Rachel and John and his sisters Libby and Orly never got to see him again. They never got to hold their son, their brother. They never got to say goodbye. I hope that somehow Hersh knew how hard his family and friends and all of us all over the world tried. I hope he knew how desperately we wanted to bring him home. I've been thinking a lot about an image that Rachel used in the piece she wrote when she could not have possibly imagined what the next 328 days would mean for her and her family. Her trips around the world, her address to the United Nations and at the DNC just 2 weeks ago, She and John couldn't have known what the universe had in store for them then, the hard things they would have to endure with a dignity and grace that is simply beyond comprehension. Rachel wrote this 5 days after Hersh was kidnapped, referencing the story of the flood that he read about in his bar mitzvah parsha. She wrote, "Hersh is my whole world. And this evil is the flood that is destroying it. I really don't know if anything can save it. If anyone knows, please tell me. To save a life, our sages taught, is to save a world. Please help me save my son. It will save my world." She continued, "Every single person in Gaza has a mother or had a mother at some point. And I would say this then as a mother to other mothers, if you see Hersh, please help him." I think about it a lot. I really think I would help your son if he was in front of me, injured, near me. So here's what we have to do with all of our heartbreak, with all of our sorrow and frustration, all of our anger and our rage. We have to remember the beautiful, precious, kind, and generous soul whose absence causes such sorrow. Hersh's soul is like that of his mother and father, kind and loving, gracious and pure. This past Sunday, I was about to perform a wedding, and I was wondering, how do you begin a wedding in the wake of such news? And 5 hours before the ceremony, I got a text from a friend in Jerusalem who was also at a wedding. He said, "You won't believe it. I'm at a wedding with some of our mutual friends. And Hersh and his family were supposed to be here in another world. And John, whose son had just been murdered, reached out that morning to the family of the groom to wish them mazel tov and to tell them that he wanted them to celebrate with full hearts, that that's what Hersh would have wanted as well." That's a pure soul. We've come to know this family, and when 328 days after she published that article, we read those words of Rachel's, words directed at the captors and their enablers who could have saved his life. When we hear her say, "I really think I would help your son if he was in front of me, injured, near me," we know it's true because we've come to know who she is. She would help a stranger's child who was in pain. So to honor Hersh Goldberg-Polin, let's find the strength, as impossibly hard as it seems right now, to flood this world with kindness, with compassion, and with love. That won't be easy to do. Not with the feelings we are holding right now, not with the frustration and the exhaustion and the anger. But that's what we need to do. And so tonight, let me suggest that we start with one another. Those of you in this room, those of you joining us online. Let's be so kind to each other. Let's be so compassionate with one another. And let's send that love and compassion and our prayers for strength and healing to the families of our Aiden and Carmel, our Alex and Almog and Ori and Hersh. Let's flood the world with righteousness and compassion. Let's drown in the togetherness of goodness. It might not feel like we have it in us, like it's in our nature, but of this I am certain. It's exactly what Hersh would do. Yehi Zichro Baruch. His memory is a blessing.